Strange, but true stories. Tales from the light side, the dark side, and the other side. I'm Steve White. We've talked many times about whether we are alone in the universe or if there is an abundance of life just beyond our current comprehension. Just this year, there was a report of a mysterious radio signal being received here on Earth. Every 16 days, this repeating fast radio burst, or FRBs, would be received and then stop, only to repeat again in 16 days. Scientists are still researching the origin of these FRBs, and I'm not here to state that it's any evidence of intelligent life trying to contact us, but it does make me wonder and anticipate what is truly out there sending out the radio signal. Today's story, though, has been called one of the best documented cases of alien abduction. And it's a little surprising that more people don't know about this case since it received quite a bit of attention at the time. Thursday, October 11th, 1973, Pascagoula, Mississippi. Charles Hickson and his friend Calvin Parker Jr. decided that after a hard day's work at the shipyard, they would go fishing on the Pascagoula River. They didn't have any success at their first fishing hole. The fish just weren't biting that evening. After a long while, it was kind of getting late, and nary a nibble on the end of their line, so they decided to try another location near the shipyard and fish from a pier to see if their luck would be a little bit better. They weren't there long when Hickson was reeling in his line to rebait the hook, and he started to hear what he described as a hissing sound behind him. He stood up on the pier and he looked around. Hovering just above the ground, he saw what he estimated to be a 30 to 40 foot long oblong or football-shaped craft with a dome on top of it. Two blue lights from what he determined to be the front of the craft were pulsating. Parker Jr. joined Hickson as they tried to figure out what they were looking at. At that moment, a door opened and a brilliant light emanated from inside the craft, temporarily paralyzing the pair. Three beings came through that doorway towards them. In a 1999 interview, Hickson described what they looked like and what happened next.
They were very wrinkled, and I didn't see any eyes. And I know now, I didn't know then, I know now they were robots. But anyhow, they came around to the side of me. One took hold of this shoulder, and I felt pain in it, just instantly pain. Another one took hold of this shoulder, and I just went limp. And they weren't touching the ground. The light was off the ground, and they were just gliding out to where I was.
Levitating?
Levitating. And I seemed to just, when they took hold of me, I just raised up to the height they were. And we was in that beam of light, and they was taking me toward the ship, and I noticed Calvin at this time, and when one took a hold of him, he fainted. I didn't know if he'd pass out with fear.
The two men were indeed frightened by what was happening to them. Hickson has a memory of being brought inside the UFO into a very brightly lit room, with light coming from the walls above him and below him. His robot hosts left him in the middle of this room. Hickson claims he was still hovering at this point without any assistance or prop to hold him up.
I could tell that I couldn't move anything but my eyes. I could move my eyes. I could tell that they had left me. And something in the wall in front of me, it came out of that light in that wall and moved up in front of me about this far. It was probably this big around, and it appeared to me like a big eye. But there was something in there, there was some kind of instrument. I can't describe what it was. But anyhow, this thing remained there for a few seconds or minutes, and it went downward. And of course, I'm having to assume it went under me and came back up my backside, because after a while, it moved back up in front of me again.
The sensor eye disappeared back into the wall in front of him, and soon after, the alien hosts, again what Hickson called robots with their pincer-like hands, came back into the room. During this interview, Hickson recalled that When he was under hypnosis following this event, he recalled seeing a window to another room, and he had a memory of seeing the true alien creatures that were actually running the ship.
But they looked almost like we did. And what they were doing, evidently, they couldn't live in our atmosphere, I don't suppose. And they had these robots to examine us. We didn't distract their attention one way or the other, saying they had something to do. And I tried to talk to them, but I couldn't hear myself. You can hear yourself talk. I couldn't even talk. And they don't, I guess, what they were supposed to do.
The next memory that Hickson had was the robot-like creatures leading him out of the ship, and they gently put him back down on the pier. He remembers his legs being weak, and he struggled to get to his feet. After a few moments, he managed to get up, and he saw his friend Calvin on the riverbank, with his arms outstretched above his head, reaching up towards space, and he was in shock. Hickson went to his friend, who wasn't speaking and didn't really seem capable of any movement at that point. Hickson said he shook him and then had to slap him across the face to get him to snap out of his stupor. The two men discussed what had happened. Neither man felt like the creatures harmed them or intended to harm them. Neither Hickson or Parker were wearing a watch, and they don't know how long they were on the craft. Hickson speculated it could have been 2 or 3 hours, but they really didn't know. After a few more minutes of discussion, the two men felt like the local authorities needed to be told in case there was any threat to the country. They drove to the sheriff's office and relayed the night's events to the officers on duty. They told authorities they had just been abducted by aliens, with each showing officers a puncture wound in one arm. The two men were met with disbelieving looks and discouraging words, the officers believing the two men were drunk, or lying, or more likely both. Despite asking the sheriff's department to keep the incident as quiet as possible, local and national media started contacting the men the next day, which also alerted 2 UFO researchers who came to conduct hypnosis sessions with the men. After putting both under hypnosis and hearing the men's stories again from their subconscious mind, belief in the two began to increase. The sheriff's office decided to give them a polygraph examination.
I went to the sheriff's department, they had a polygraph examiner there, and when he took me back in the room, he told me, he said, I'm going to tell you this, he was going to prove me to be a liar. He said, now, if you want to go out, I'll go out there and tell them that it just wouldn't work when you don't want to take this polygraph test. I said, man, I'm tired, give out, I want to get home. Give me the damn thing. So when he got through, in fact, he gave me 2 tests. And Fred Diamond, the sheriff, said when he got through and went on the outside, he said, that man is telling the damn truth in there.
In fact, in an attempt to catch them in a lie, the officers left the men alone in the interview room, but kept recording them to see if they would break and discuss their stories to try to keep things straight. This is what the officers captured instead.
This is, I had a heart attack now. How come one damage and died?
Scared me to death too, son. Jesus Christ.
What's so damn bad about it? There's nobody to believe it. That's what's so
I thought I
bad.
had been through enough of hell on this earth, and now I gotta go through something like this, see?
Jackson County Sheriff's Captain Glenn Ryder told a local newspaper several years after the incident, "We did everything we knew to try to break their stories. If they were lying to me, they should be in Hollywood." So Hickson did just that. With zero chance of things returning to normal anytime soon, Hickson hit the talk show circuit, appearing on both The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and The Dick Cavett Show, and then published a book about the experience in 1983. Parker Jr., however, did not fare well. He said many years later he feared the aliens had infected him with something, and after returning home from the sheriff's office, took a bath in bleach. He also didn't stick around town for long after that. Wanting to escape the spotlight, Parker found work in the oil fields soon after. If anyone came up to him and inquired, "Hey, aren't you that guy who got abducted by aliens over in Pascagoula?" he would quit that job right away. Still, there were many who doubted the story, believing Hickson had just suffered from sleep paralysis with hallucinations, and that his friend was highly susceptible to suggestion. Though Hickson doesn't think the aliens meant the two men any harm that night, he does wonder if something doctors found later during an intense examination may be a remnant of that night.
They found something on the back of my eyeball, back of the knot. And they don't know what it is. Well, a long time ago they found it. They don't know what this is. And they even sent me to New Orleans to a cancer doctor. They thought it might be a cancer back of my eyeball. And it's not changing. They check me every 6 months. And that could possibly be something they implanted in me.
As the men put more time between them and the incident, the spotlight faded, and that's when they started to hear from other people who had seen that very UFO that night, going up and down the Pascagoula River. They had not come forward because they were afraid.
I've had a man write me from Atlanta, Georgia, just a little while back. He told us in Mississippi it's been a long time. So I finally want to tell you that me and two more of my friends saw that night. We were small boys. And said we were so afraid we wouldn't tell nobody and we'd come out then. But he wrote me a long letter and told me that we did see that night. And then there's a lady that was out back from somewhere over there that was in the evening, in the summertime, hanging her clothes on the back. And she said she saw some kind of crash. It looked like it was coming over that way. And a lot of people saw it.
While Hickson certainly was willing to tell his story, he didn't profit very much from it. In the final years of Hickson's life, Parker said he helped Hickson by paying some of his bills for him to just keep the lights on. Hickson died in 2011. Parker emerged from hiding in 2018 to write a book about his account of what happened that night. On June 22, 2019, a plaque was placed in the spot the men claimed they were standing when they were abducted that night along the Pascagoula River. The plaque claims, in part, it's one of the best documented cases of alien abduction. After many years of reflection and thinking about the encounter, what he says, 1,000,000 times, Hickson said he didn't regret what happened to him and Parker that night.
I don't wish it hadn't have happened to me. But now I know that there's another world out there somewhere. And I've had an opportunity to meet some of the most brilliant scientists in the world. And I've met a lot of people, UFO investigators, and everybody else from all over the country and all over the world. And no, I don't wish it hadn't happened.
Now, one striking similarity between this story and the story about the Flatwoods monster in West Virginia from a couple of weeks ago is the description of the hovering creature, robot or machine-like, emerging from the ship with pincer-type appendages. So what do you think? Let us know in the comments below, and also we would love to hear your strange but true stories, whether about your own personal encounter with aliens or supernatural beings, or something that you just can't quite logically make sense of. Send us your story in an email to strangebutTrueStories2@gmail.com. Subscribe if you haven't already, and sign up for notifications so you know when the next video drops to the channel. As always, we appreciate the support, and thanks for watching this video. I'm Steve White. Until next time.